First story, my deadbeat father threatened to bust my skull open when I yelled. He ditched me at the hospital when my grandma was dying, stole my money, and still wonders why I'm terrified and cutting ties with him. I, 18M, am terrified of my own father, 48M. The whole story starts back in September 2023 when I turned 18. I do not live with my father, nor have I for most of my life. My grandparents raised me, and my grandfather, 66M, passed away 6 years ago. My grandmother, 60F, passed away in January 2024. One day, me and my grandmother were having an argument, and she was aware I was scared of my father, so she called him but thought she had hung up. So, she yelled at me, and I yelled back. No more than 5 minutes later, I received a phone call from my father in a deep, low voice, saying to apologize now. So, I do, and he starts to threaten me, including threatening to cave my skull in. I told him 3 times to calm down because my grandmother was having breathing issues. My grandmother was his mother. He refused to calm down and continued to yell and scream his head off at me. Eventually, I couldn't deal with both, so I hung up on him, and fed my grandmother to get her to read a bit more normally. As soon as she was able to start breathing a bit more normally, he called back and was screaming at me. My grandmother said, "Give it to me," immediately. He insisted on her giving it back, and he swore and yelled at me and told me not to hang up. But I had told him that I had given him 3 chances before I was going to hang up because I couldn't deal with him yelling at me and taking care of his mother who is having a COPD attack. He said that he was coming over and he was going to cave my skull in, and he hit me. That was the first time he ever threatened physical violence against me, and it has not been the last. He did end up coming over, however, I was lucky because my grandmother told me to sit next to her. She is a lot smaller than both me and my father. My father is 6 feet 4 inches, and I'm 6 feet 3 inches. My grandmother was 5 feet 9 inches. He then started to say things that weren't true and ended up saying he loved me but was angry and stormed out. When he got here, he was loaded for bear, and with the amount of anger he had, my grandmother had a second COPD attack. I ended up having to call the community paramedic program for her. The paramedic came and gave her something because she had pneumonia. Finally, she had calmed down again and gone to use the bathroom, but she never finished that second attack because she came out of the bathroom and immediately told me to call an ambulance. She went into the hospital the next day. While she was in there, I called my father to tell him, and I stated that it was his fault that she was in there. Instead, he starts yelling and screaming at me on the phone, and I tell him I don't care what he says, I'm going there, and I will be her visitor, no one else. He says he does the same thing. However, I was already half-dressed, and I immediately hopped on the city bus, got over to the hospital, and he wasn't anywhere close. I live at the opposite end of town from the hospital. Technically, when he lived a lot closer, I made the trip back and forth from that hospital multiple times, and my grandmother ended up coming home that day luckily. After that, I was taking time off school because I couldn't leave her home alone anymore because I was worried she was going to have another attack while I was at school. During my 2 weeks off before the Christmas break, he never called or tried anything to contact her. She then had another attack just before Christmas and had to go to the hospital. She spent Christmas in the hospital, got out a few days later, and me and her were at home. She had to go back on New Year's Day, was in for a week, and got out. She had told me she wanted to do as much as we could within that week because she didn't know how much longer she had because she had signed up for medical assistance and death and had set her date for what is now 2 weeks ago. A week went by, and my aunt, her niece, was over visiting with her granddaughter, and my grandmother went into another attack. She went to the hospital, and my aunt picked me up the next day. That's when she told me that the doctors don't think she'll live much longer. I spent that entire day with my grandmother, and I went home at night. I had stuff I had to do in the morning which I couldn't do, so I ended up going up to see her in the afternoon. I had something I had to do in the evening, but I went right back after, and my grandmother told me that she wanted me back early the next day so we could spend the day together. The next day, she went into a coma, and a week later, she died. The next day, my aunt and my father met at the funeral home to make all the arrangements. My grandmother owned no property, and I was the main executor of her will, the main inheritor of her will, and I was her power of attorney. My grandmother had received a letter the week before she died that was sitting in our mail because I wasn't home, saying she owed the building money. I ended up paying for the building, and when I told my father, he began yelling and screaming at me. We did not talk until that Friday. I saw him, we talked a little, and then we parted ways. The next week, he found out that a friend of my grandmother had set up a GoFundMe account for her. I had known about it when I met with him on Friday, but I didn't mention it because I didn't want to start a fight. Next week was my grandmother's celebration of life, and he told me and my aunt to tell everyone it was a potluck. Then the night before, he got angry with me and my aunt for telling everyone it was a potluck because all of a sudden, his wife, my stepmom, and her mom were going to do this stuff. Both me and my aunt had said, "It's too late now," and he yelled and screamed at me and hung up the phone. Me and him had also thought about that the entire week because he did not want to have bagpipes at my grandmother's celebration of life, despite me having joined the band of my city and my grandmother loving the bagpipes. That side of my family is not Scottish, it is my mother's side, but my grandmother loved the bagpipes, and she was extremely happy when I joined the band. Finally, he caved and allowed us to have the bagpipes, but just before the bagpipes started, he left. Over the last few months since then, me and him have had multiple fights, and we had a fight yesterday when I called to tell him of my dog's passing and I shared with him some news about what some other people in my family want to do with my grandmother's ashes. He then yelled and screamed at me and treated me like a piece of garbage, and whenever I tried to defend myself, he got even angrier. He then told me today that he would handle them, and he essentially joked because he said he threatened to hurt me and he would threaten to hurt them. My father has management issues, and I am terrified of him when he gets angry, especially because there is nothing to calm him down anymore. My grandmother, despite being a little woman, could still control her son. He was her only child. I can't go into contact as yet because he has my grandfather's ashes, and we're trying to arrange things out for the ashes. However, all the ashes are coming back to me eventually. I also have multiple younger siblings, including 2 who live with him full-time. My one brother lives with me and his mother, and then my one sister lives with her mother. I am afraid that if I go without contact with him, I'll endanger my siblings. He tells me I can't do this on my own, and yet he leaves me on my own for over a month to try and do everything. He also owes me over $200 in money that he's borrowed from me. Update 1. This update is to update you guys on new things and to clarify a few things. I have attempted to get the police involved, and they have essentially said they can't do anything with the money because I lent it to him, and I wasn't technically forced into it, despite my explaining to them that the way he had faced the reason he needed the money was that he would have been killed. The officer I spoke to only gave me his first name, and I called my detachment and left a message for their sergeant to call me back as soon as possible, but I still haven't heard anything. The second thing is that I am incredibly broke. I am physically and mentally disabled and live by myself, so I try my best to do everything, but it's hard for me. I do not work at the moment because I'm still trying to get into 12th grade in order to have a job where I don't have to be standing all day. I need to have that because I cannot stand for an entire shift. The third reason I am being very protective over my younger siblings is because only 2 others don't live with him at the moment. My full brother doesn't even really talk to him, and the other one who doesn't live with him does talk to him, just not often. The other 2 are 15 and 11. I don't want to lose contact with them either because I'm afraid that is what will happen. When my father is not angry, he is an incredibly nice guy, but he refuses to get any actual help and he refuses to involve family in his issues besides asking me for money. The fourth thing is that he also still has my grandfather's ashes. Anyway, on with the update. I told him last week that I needed that money ASAP, and he said that he got paid on the 6th of this month and that he would pay me on the 7th. Well, I'm guessing this 7th wasn't too good for him because then he said he would pay me on the 8th. I had to go to another town with my mom, and my brother and his girlfriend came along with us because we were visiting my mom's dad's grave. When I told him that, he said to text him when I got up. I did, and there wasn't an answer. So, I called him, and still, there wasn't an answer. It was getting late, so me, my mother, my brother, and his girlfriend decided to go visit the grave. My father had said that he'd pay me after we got back, but he did not. Instead, apparently, my one brother was tapped by a car on his way home, so he rushed home to check on him. My brother later turned out to be fine, but instead of trying to come out and pay me, my dad said he would do it the next day. I waited until around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and my father still hadn't come to pay me. He works nights and asked me if I could ask my mother if she could pick up the money and bring it to me, and when I did, she said no because she had just gotten off work, which is understandable. I had Messenger open, so I messaged him on Messenger, and he phoned me upset that I used Messenger because his girlfriend is under the impression he's cheating on her, despite him being too old to do that anymore and knowing exactly how she would take that. So, I apologized for the mistake, which looking back on it, I shouldn't have had to, and told him that he'd have to pay me today, which he agreed to. I tried to call him this morning, but he kept not answering. So, I went back to the hospital to visit a family member that was in there, and that's when he called me back. When I told him where I was, he said he might be coming there because he hurt himself, and he asked me if I could come to his place to pick up the money, so I did, and I only got $150 out of it, but it's better than nothing. He still owes me another $100, which he said he would pay me next week, so I am hoping for it because once he does and I get the ashes back, I will finally be free of his terror. And if I feel like I am able to go through with a restraining order, I will. The thing is, I don't have a lot of family, so I don't know if I could actually go through with it, knowing I have people who will still support me. I probably won't update for about a week or more, but please, if you have questions, comment because I live alone, so I can answer them. Second story, my man-child husband said he wants to try for another baby with a surrogate this time because he doesn't want our daughter to have my race and features, which he feels could ruin our marriage. Background: I've known my husband since high school. We met again abroad where we both studied and worked, met for lunch years later, and then started dating. We have been together for 5 years, 2 years married. We decided to move back to our home country where we are both from. Once I found out I was pregnant, I am an international adoptee from South Asia, we're both citizens of Northern Europe. My husband is white with blonde hair and blue eyes. I have South Asian features. Our child was born 2 years ago. The twists: so, my husband told me one night that he doesn't feel a connection to our child at all. I asked him how and why, and he complained that it was because of her appearance. She has more dominant features than me, i.e., dark eyes and darker hair. I swear every single friend or family member from my side has said our child looks exactly like my husband. She even has very light brown hair, not that it matters to me, but just brown eyes. He told me that he wants a family member who looks like him, with blonde hair and blue eyes. I asked him if he was open to adoption because I am, and he said no. He wants to see his own features in the child. We went back and forth until he told me he wanted to use an egg donor to conceive a child with blonde hair, blue eyes, and his genes. My first reaction was WTF. I told him that's really insulting, and how the hell can he say that about his own child, and why didn't he think about this earlier before he married and had kids with me? I just bluntly told him, we've all seen the eye charts in biology class in school, usually, brown eyes dominate. Why did he spew this all out now, 1.5 years after the birth of our child? We've been going back and forth in arguments, and he always brings up this topic in an argument and gives me the ultimatum of divorcing or accepting his decision to proceed with the white egg donor or surrogate. I have tried hashing this out in therapy with an open mind because I have genuine questions. How do you think our current child would feel about the truth? How do you think the new egg donor child would feel about the truth? What do you think others will say about this? I have discovered that many of these opinions have been formed from comments from friends or family members who have received our child as an immigrant. My question is, what's wrong with that, and what does it even matter? He also said that he would like the egg donor child to have personality traits similar to his, i.e., analytical, quiet, nature lover, etc. I personally don't think you can dictate or impact another human's personality. Moreover, it's not a great reason to have children. I have told both of his parents, and they've tried to talk to him. He is very adamant that this child will be the answer to his negative feelings about his family. My opinion, it's very insulting. If he's got microaggressions, he wants to discuss, why hasn't he come to me? I'd hope that the one person who accepts me as myself in my adoptive country would be my husband, but frankly, it does not feel like the case here. I feel like the conflict of being foreign is being passed on to my child, now and sadly by the other person who should love and accept her the most, the other parent. I personally have tried to be open to the thought, but just the principle of reasons why he wants to go ahead with this is incredibly shallow, superficial, and racist. I'm at the point where I'm considering filing for divorce. It's not going anywhere. I am curious to hear your perspectives. Kia comments, Cool Star 28008, your first reaction was the correct one, WTF. I'm so sorry that your husband didn't show his true colors until after you had a child with him. See a lawyer and get advice before you make your next move. Yelly mine was, holy F, I'd be packing my SHT so fast, up. Yeah, I just left with my baby, when the discussion wasn't going anywhere without him getting angry and defensive. Sarah Needler 33, please don't bring another child into this mess with this selfish, ridiculous man. He's at best wildly narcissistic and sounds like he would prefer a clone of himself to an actual child. Your poor daughter, I hate this for both of you but especially for her. Law Prestigious 2789, don't forget racist. Slightly stable at all. The husband sounds like the kind of guy who is blatantly racist but says, "I'm not racist because I have an Asian wife." Boring passenger, your child is going to be the last thing on his mind once he gets a new child with blonde hair. Don't do this to yourself or your kid. Lady Morgan is, R1, it doesn't even sound like he wants a child, he wants a clone of himself. Update 6 days later, so, I've started talking to a legal advisor and have a conference call with her today. Weirdly, he has suddenly switched from wanting to work things out, aka find a solution, to conceiving a new family member that makes both of us comfortable. I'm suspicious it's his father who has now talked to him, but this should be genuinely coming from him, not his parents. Whispering into his ears, I think he is realizing what he is losing. I am just so over this. I got kicked out of my own house and had to call the police to be let in by him. This was after he threatened to burn things on our property. I couldn't leave my baby alone there with him, and I didn't trust him. He also pushed me out of our kids' room and tried locking himself inside with her. I had to call the police again that morning, and then the social services people came to check on us. The other cause of friction we've had is the newly bought house we moved into in January. It needed a lot of mandatory repairs, which I have paid for. I've done everything from cooking, cleaning, laundry, taking care of the baby, organizing repairs, and driving everyone around because I'm the only one with a car and driving license. I've told him I'm exhausted, and he just doesn't care. He had the audacity to say to me, "The house runs better without me." They rude. Ironically, yesterday morning he messaged me inquiring about what some maintenance guy said about the water boiler in the house because he was suspicious it was broken. Up until now I have literally dealt with all of these things, because he has not cared at all. I need a man who can take charge of some house duties, not a man-baby who just takes me for granted. Since I left the house, I can also see that the floors have not been mopped for about a month, and our kid crawls. Savage Potato Zeroes, hello, I hope you and your baby are doing well. As a biracial person of African descent who tends to date white men, your story intrigues me. Do you plan on sharing a follow-up? I am hoping that this situation has a positive outcome for you. Thanks for your message, still under negotiations. I think he's starting to slowly realize what he's losing and wants to work things out, but I think the damage is done here, and I need to get out of this marriage with my baby. Third story entitled, Parents Demand That Op Break Up with His Girlfriend Due to Her Race, Threatening to Disown Him. Thinking he will comply as he always does, so fed up, Op disowned his parents and started living for himself. Hi everyone, this has been bothering me, for a while, and I've had nobody to talk to about it. It's really been putting me in a bad place mentally, so I figured I'd post it here to hopefully get some advice. For context, I met my girlfriend in my senior year of college. I was out of state at the university, 4 hours by car from home, and she is an international student from China. We started dating soon after we met and were seeing each other basically every weekend. My parents were against the relationship from the very beginning and considered her to be like a working girl from the start because of the way she dresses and wears makeup, which, side note, isn't even very revealing. She wears designer clothes often, but they're not overly revealing or out of the norm in any way. My mom is also slightly racist toward China, but I'm not sure how much this is influencing her actions. They told me that I shouldn't take this relationship seriously and that I should just be with her to have fun. I get attached to people somewhat easily, and I am not the type of person who goes into relationships for sex with no serious intentions. She is also my first serious girlfriend, which my parents also complain about because she's my first. I don't know any better, and I need to have more experience before I'm serious with anyone. My parents also complain about the fact that my girlfriend is a student and on a student visa, even though she has many more years of eligibility to stay in the US and is majoring in an in-demand career field. So I was dating her for a while, and my parents were okay with it until she came home with me for Christmas. I had been head over heels for this girl up until this point and was completely infatuated, so my parents had some merit in saying that I was not myself. But things slowly started changing, as my parents' complaints became more forceful and aggressive after our vacation together with my parents during winter break. I went back to school, and we were together when I randomly got a call from my mom telling me that I have to break up with her or else. Because my mom found out that I took her to eat somewhere expensive for her birthday, which was in December, I was able to cool things down. I told my mom I needed time to be able to break up and delayed things by saying that I'd break up by the summer, and so on. There were arguments every few weeks, which usually resulted in my mom blocking me over something small, and then threatening to disown me. Only for me to beg, apologize, and reiterate that I'd break up by summer. Fast forward to summer. By this point, my mom had a revelation and decided to give my girlfriend another chance. But things didn't work out in the end because of a miscommunication, and my mom freaking out about little things, such as my girlfriend being upset about one of my female friends. At this point, my mom threatened to disown me again and blocked me again. However, at this point, I'm living alone in a completely different part of the country, as I have graduated and landed a good job. This back and forth has gone on until today, basically going from blocked to unblocked, from hated to loved, and back and forth, all while my mom says she's doing this for me and loves me one week, and tells me to go right myself the next week for little things that happen. There is almost no communication about problems, as my mom is always right. Here's where I stand today. My parents are threatening to block me for good and never talk to me again or see me ever again unless I leave my girlfriend. I have never made any commitments to marry my girlfriend, nor have we any plans to live together, as we're currently far apart and may be this way for some time because of the location of my job. My parents have also done this before with a previous girlfriend of mine whom they didn't approve of, but I broke up much easier with that girl since I wasn't too into it, so it never got to this point. I just feel so alone, and I love my parents so much. We've had such a good relationship in the past, and they've been very good to me, though I have always been afraid of my mom. She's extremely overprotective, makes me tell her wherever I am at all times, and freaks out if it takes me longer than 30 minutes to answer a text. We also use an app where she can track me and see wherever I go, and she'll often call me almost screaming if she sees that I'm sitting still too long. However, they always provided for me and paid for my tuition and everything. However, I also love my girlfriend and feel like I would be miserable and regret it for the rest of my life if I left her without really wanting it or it feeling right deep inside of me. I also believe she loves me, as she has tried hard in her own way to make things right with my parents, has stayed with me despite all this pressure on our relationship, and is staying in the US mainly for me. My parents think that she's just with me for a green card, but I very much doubt that with 100% certainty, and I don't plan on marrying her within the next 5 years, anyway. But at the same time, I don't know for sure if it will work out in the long term either, and I'm not rushing into it. But I want the chance to explore this relationship because I really think we love each other. So, I don't know what I should do or how I should feel at this point. I just feel so empty inside and lonely. TLDR, my parents are threatening to disown me or block me on everything if I don't break up with my girlfriend of 1.5 years. I love her, but we haven't made any long-term commitments to each other. We have both made sacrifices and communicated to show our love. My parents are also great parents but super overprotective, such as using an app to track me at all times, and have also done this before with my previous girlfriend. I don't live at home, but I don't know what to do because I love both my parents and my girlfriend, but I know I will regret it if I leave her. Update: Hey everyone, I've been reading every single comment and I've been thinking about it. I appreciate all the advice. I think y'all are right. I'm not going to budge on this issue, and I'm simply going to let them block me and go from there. I can't be happy in my life if I'm living it for them, and if I need to have their approval and blessings to do anything. We're still a little interconnected with some things like car insurance and such, so I'll see if they tell me when they cancel it and such, but I'm not going to budge. I love my girlfriend, and honestly, being free from my parents' emotional control will let me truly express my love without worry or holding back. I'm going to start looking for a therapist, like many of you have suggested, and I think this has honestly led to deeper issues in my life over time, as I have always felt like I was living for them and not myself. I have only ever felt happy when they were happy, so I'll have to work on that.